So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
Now, on the political scene, one of the Democratic candidates is Senator Joseph Biden. Have you seen the problem he's been having? He went around and made a speech. And apparently, he quoted I think it was a British politician, took his speech and kind of paraphrased it as his own. And then the press got on him, and then he was charged also with taking part of Bobby Kennedy's speeches. And Biden says, not to worry, he reassured his staff. He said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Good morning. It's Thursday, Jordan Peterson Thursday, July the 31st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Jordan Peterson. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
Fox News Alert, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, releasing a bombshell report today that shows a conspiracy by a sitting president, Barack Obama, and his intel agencies to sabotage the president-elect, Donald Trump, brainwash the electorate, and undermine the legitimacy of an election.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't.
Gabbard got her hands on a House intel report that's been locked away in a CIA vault for almost a decade. Investigators spent over 2,000 hours looking into how the Russia hoax was born, interviewing 20 CIA and FBI officials. And it turns out that the Obama administration doctored the intelligence to make it look like Putin and Trump stole the election. A month after Trump beat Hillary, Barack Obama wasn't satisfied with his intelligence reporting and ordered his CIA director to create a new assessment of how Russia interfered with the election. This was a highly unusual move. John Brennan handpicked 5 CIA analysts to write the assessment, and they were siloed. None of them knew what the other was doing, and only one analyst was in charge of drafting this report. There was nothing routine about this, and it was a rush job to publish before Trump was sworn in. Nothing was coordinated with the other intelligence agencies either. Basically, this was home cooking for Barack Obama. There were 4 key elements from the assessment that were repeated over and over again and formed the basis of the Russia hoax and the Robert Mueller witch hunt. 1, that Vladimir Putin wanted Donald Trump to win. 2, Putin took action to help Trump win. 3, the Russians had blackmail on Trump. That was the Steele dossier. And 4, that the Russians tried colluding with the Trump campaign. None of any of this was ever true. There was no reliable intelligence to support any of these allegations. Senior CIA officials repeatedly refused to traffic in these allegations, but they were repeatedly overruled by CIA Director Brennan and FBI Director Comey, who insisted that they be pushed, even without verifiable evidence. The Obama administration cherry-picked the intelligence, lied about their sources, misquoted sources, didn't corroborate their claims, suppressed intelligence that ran counter to their narratives, and even used anonymous internet postings. Rank and file CIA admitted what they were doing violated their own tradecraft standards. There was a massive pressure campaign that came right from the top. CIA analysts say they received unusual directives from political appointees, the CIA director, and Obama himself. This is how the Russia hoax was born.
Donald Trump knows that the Russians helped him win in 2016.
Putin hated Secretary Clinton so much that the flip side of that coin was he had a clear preference for the person running against the person he hated so much.
It was Russia in a very systematic way tried to interfere in the election and to try to advance the prospects of Donald Trump being elected.
This was such a malicious disinformation campaign perpetrated on the American people that at one point, 60% of Democrats believed the Russians hacked our voting machines to help Trump win the White House. What this report actually shows is that the Russians just wanted to create chaos and undermine Americans' faith in democracy. Solid intelligence suggested that Vladimir Putin didn't care who won. He had no preference. But like most people, expected Hillary to win and had a little docket of compromising dirt on her, dirt that he never released. Now, if Putin wanted Trump to win, why didn't Putin drop the dirt?
There were high-level...
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. And now, the patriotic short.
I said to my bombardier at breakfast, Andy, Fred Anderson, let's go for a walk. I got a question. Of course, I already knew the answer to the question, but I wanted to establish what I'm going to do and what I've got to say just between the two of us. Emphasize that more than anything else. So I said to Andy, will you have a problem if I extend my bass leg before turning on to a track other than the designated? He picked it up right away, and he knew why. And he said, I agree. I got you. If it hadn't been for that maneuver on my part, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
And that was a Patriotic Short. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now, motivation.
And what is it that makes it worth fighting for? When you're getting trampled by life, when everything is working against you, when anything that could go wrong does go wrong, what makes it worth it to you to keep pushing forward? What keeps you going?
I don't know what you're going through right now, but I need you to remember, if you can find a why for living, you can endure almost any how.
When you're getting attacked by life, you're going through the worst pain you've ever felt, and you can find those reasons that make you strong enough to keep going, you will find a way through it. You'll shift your inner dialogue from, why does this have to happen to me? I don't deserve this. I can't handle this, to good. I'm glad this happened. This is a chance to get better. This is a chance to improve myself and my situation. I can do this. I can handle this. I got what it takes. We all want to be a beast, but do you know what a beast is? A beast is someone who can go through hell and be grateful that their legs are working. A beast is someone who's lost everything, but is grateful for the opportunity to get everything back and get even more. A beast is someone who can hit rock bottom and can say, Roger that. I'm going to harness this. It is only up from here. I'm going to come back even stronger.
What most people do is, once you get stressed in the process, you don't want it anymore. You give up, you fold, you quit, you're through. But in order to develop, in order to become the best version of yourself, stress is necessary. See, a seed has got to have dirt on top of it in order to grow and develop. Dirt builds character. Dirt gives you the push-through factor. Dirt makes you fight through it when you don't feel like fighting anymore.
Everybody gets dirt put on them at one point or another. And that's the moment. That teaches you to withstand it. It gives you something to push through.
So when you feel like giving up, don't. When it looks like you're not going to make it, keep going. When they tell you you can't, ignore them. When they tell you you're not going to make it, do not believe them. You got to become fucking relentless. Never stop, never quit.
The most important thing is your passion. You win with your heart, not your head. You win on emotion, not on logic. The most important thing to winning is the power of believing in you. The power of believing that you can win. The power of believing that good things will happen to you. The power of believing that you're special.
You must believe that you can. And once you want something and believe that you can get it, you got to block out all the noise around you that's going to tell you you can't do it. Don't listen to all that shit. Listen to yourself, that voice within you that tells you that it is possible, that there is a way for you to be successful in this business, in this career, in this life.
In this situation that you're in, your life is at stake. You are fighting for your life every day. By the way that you live it, the mark that you're going to leave, the legacy that you're going to leave, all that is going to come back to you. That is your life. So don't sit back and be on the defense and allow life to happen to you. Don't do that. Instead, go on the offense. Go on the attack. Become the aggressor. Be the one that life is afraid to mess with. And remember that everybody won't make it to your next level because everybody won't be willing to sacrifice what it takes to create greatness. This is your journey. Struggle is a part of it. Losses are a part of it. Setbacks are a part of it. Sometimes you have to go through your worst just to become your best. Sometimes you have to lose everything just to gain everything. Don't let it discourage you. Let it encourage you.
Fail your way to success. Fail your way forward. Failure is only when you stop trying. Failure is just another step in the staircase to go higher.
You will never grow without growing pains. The valley will never grow without growing pains. The valley might be ugly, but I promise you, the peak is beautiful, and it will all be worth it. So don't ever stop climbing, because the only way it works is if you work. The only way you progress is if you proceed. So you rise above anything or anyone that's in your way that's trying to prevent you from being great.
You know how you get confidence? By attacking your fear, attacking those hard things you know you gotta face and overcoming them. There's a big misconception out there that people who are successful are not afraid.
And that was motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now the Daily Stoic.
3 parts, 1 aim. The best and the greatest number of authors have asserted that philosophy consists of 3 parts, the moral, the natural, and the rational. The first puts the soul in order. The second thoroughly examines the natural order of things. The third inquires into the proper meaning of words and their arrangements and proofs which keep falsehoods from creeping in to displace truth. Seneca, Moral Letters, 89.9.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
God, in his infinite power, make it the case that 2 + 2 = 5. Well, heck, he's infinitely powerful. I guess why not? Could God, in his infinite power, make adultery a virtue? Well, I guess. I mean, he's declared adultery to be bad, but could he declare it something good? I suppose he could. Well, of course not. Because you're driving a wedge thereby between God's power and God's manner of being. Can God sin? Well, of course God can sin. God is infinitely powerful. Heck, I can sin. Why couldn't God sin? Of course, God can't sin. It would be repugnant to his manner of being. Therefore, it's no restriction on God's power to say God can't make 2 + 2 = 5. Because 2 + 2 being equal to 4 is simply a participation in the truth that God is. Thus, God's power cannot be at odds with God's manner of being.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "Statism needs war. A free country does not. Statism survives by looting. A free country survives by production." Unquote. And that's Ayn Rand from the chapter, The Roots of War, from the book, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, psychopathy.
Dr. Peterson explains the dark triad. Take a look.
Personality that was based on pathology, like on the dark side. And he called that the dark triad. Machiavellianism. That means Machiavellian is someone who, so let's say, if I was Machiavellian in our discussions, what I would have done was think, before I came here, I thought, well, what can Joe offer me? A narcissist, that's the next part of the dark triad, is someone who wants social status without doing any of the work. They want all the attention. If you're dating a narcissist or in a relationship with a narcissist, they'll alienate all your family members and your friends so that they get all the attention. And that'll just be the first of the games they play with you.
Yeah.
Then you have psychopathy, and the psychopaths are parasitical predators. And so the predator will take whatever you've got, and the parasite will live off you. And then here's...
The dark triad represents the unholy trinity. Look no...
And that was psychopathy. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart.
Tomorrow, Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
All right. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. We've been talking about a melt up for the stock market. Looks like we've got it. Certainly for 2 big technology names. Will you look at this? Microsoft reported strong growth in its cloud business. Very strong, I'd call it. Not to mention solid profits and strong showing from its AI operation. The stock is up a whopping 8.7%. That's $44. It's at $5.57. That's the price. An even stronger gain from Meta. Zuckerberg will keep spending big on AI. That's what investors want. The stock is up 11.26%, up $78. That is working wonders for the tech-heavy NASDAQ. Modest gains for the Dow and the S&P. There's green right there, but look at the NASDAQ. It's up 316 points. That is 1.3%. Now look at Apple and Amazon. Those are two tech giants that report after the bell this afternoon. In advance of the numbers, Apple is up, just 50 cents, but Amazon is up 3%. No big rally for Bitcoin, $118,000 per coin. That's what I've got down. You'll see it on your screen with any luck. I think it's 118. Yes, it is 118. Sorry. But the rally in Ethereum, that continues. The yield on the 10-year Treasury, that's coming in this morning at 4.36%. The yield on the 2-year coming in at 3.95%, edging closer to 4%. Oil is just shy of $70 a barrel, 69.57 this morning. Now, there is a lot of trade news. Trump has a deal with South Korea, and like the deal with the European Union, there will be a lot of money coming into America, and South Korea will be buying a lot of American energy. Trump wants to hit Brazil with 50% tariffs. He doesn't like their trial of a former Brazilian president who was a Trump supporter. And our president has slapped a 50% tariff on imported copper. Then there's politics. The Democrats are trying to upset all these trade agreements, saying there is no emergency, so Trump doesn't have the authority to impose tariffs. All right, on the show today, Zoran Mandani is trying to soften his image. Despite his anti-police statements, he will attend the funeral of the police officer killed by a gunman in Manhattan office building. He's now walking back his previous statements on defunding the police. We'll look at the media and the Democrats who still cannot bring themselves to see anything positive about President Trump. No matter how many wins Trump chalks up, they'll always find something to complain about. You will not get that here. Trump's on a roll. Thursday, July the 31st, 2025.
And that was Stuart Varney, and I can't believe that he gets paid $10 million a year to do that. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now from the American Thinker by Robert Weisberg, The Perils of Linguistic Debasement. And I'm going to start on the third paragraph. Both the dollar and the English language are mediums of exchange. And just as the dollar bill can become worthless, words can deteriorate into gobbledygook. Unfortunately, with no Secret Service to prevent linguistic debasement, American politics seems to be undergoing an epidemic-like linguistic inflation akin to the German currency inflation of 1923, when the mark became virtually valueless. It is not that English is adding new words or that old words evolve. Rather, innumerable words are losing their original meaning, a situation akin to currency becoming valueless. Such linguistic inflation is particularly evident in the victimhood vocabulary, where terms are stretched into meaninglessness for political gain. Racism is undoubtedly the most extreme example, and almost anything can now be deemed racist. Like gravity, racism is everywhere, and like gravity, its impact is allegedly undeniable. Indeed, inventing new forms of racism has become a thriving industry, and its inventors often claim racism can be nearly invisible, implicit racial bias, and atmospheric in its impact, systemic racism, and structural racism. A similar linguistic debasement affects hate. What was once just a strong aversion, dislike, or loathing has been transformed into mere disagreement. Now, objection to same-sex marriage has been redefined as hating homosexuals. So opposition to a court-mandated public policy makes one homophobic. Ditto for disagreeing with those endorsing surgery to alter a person's biological sex or allowing boys to compete in girls' sports. All allegedly transphobic. Significantly, appending phobic to this newly expanded hate definition conveys an element of mental illness, implying that the cure for hatred is not reasoned rejoinders, but mental counseling. Then they're stretching oppression to include nearly everything that a thin-skinned person might find objectionable. Now, for example, a youngster struggling in a tough college might consider himself oppressed. And since this oppression is inescapable, only liberation is the solution to this stifling oppression. And now commonplace oppression is microaggressions. Here, even the slightest unpleasant encounter, e.g., bad restaurant service, becomes as aggression, while a compliment might be a microaggression. For example, a white person telling a black man, "You're smart." President Donald J. Trump's election has supercharged linguistic inflation. His enemies have ransacked the historical vocabulary of evil appellations to discredit him. Name-calling has replaced offering policy alternatives. Defamations include Nazi, fascist, and king, while his exercise of legitimate legal authority has been compared to Hitler's Gestapo. One notable civil rights lawyer, Bert Newborn, wrote a detailed comparison between Trump and Hitler. Words have been twisted to the point where ending federal funds to National Public Radio becomes censorship, while banning schools from teaching about drag queens violates freedom of expression. Trump's enemies have also utilized legal-like phraseology against him, though it is clear to those familiar with this terminology that this use is grossly inappropriate. Trump is thus accused of creating a constitutional crisis, or is an existential threat to democracy, by firing executive branch employees while unleashing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency to kidnap the undocumented, so as to put them into concentration camps and children into cages. When Trump seeks to protect Jewish college students, he's accused of undermining academic freedom. For supporters of Hamas, Trump is allowing an apartheid, colonial settler-run Israel to commit genocide. Sadly, few people know what a concentration camp is or will look up apartheid, let alone correct those abusing the English language. This debasement of the English language, like currency debasement, is dangerous. Crying wolf is risky. Endlessly evoking oppression or fascism insulates people from recognizing the real thing when and if it appears. Ditto for accusations of election fraud. America is not immune to government overreach with unauthorized wiretaps, extralegal harassment of radicals, frivolous lawsuits, and similar political excesses. But if the slightest overstep is denounced as totalitarian, what happens when a real wolf arrives? Eviscerating our vocabulary, just a second here, can only further dumb down public debate. Discussing public affairs now becomes a Tower of Babel, where each person and their personal and possibly unique definition of racism or constitutional crisis appears, and people talk past each other. As George Orwell famously said, the slovenliness of our language makes it easy for us to have foolish thoughts. Hyperelastic definitions also permit the uninformed, particularly TV pundits, to enter the debate, since the ill-informed can always inanely say, well, to me, a threat to democracy just means electing a bad person, and who can disagree? This is a marketplace of ideas where nobody can agree on the meaning of words. Ironically, the opposite may also be true. Deceptive labeling can restrict entry into a public forum by demonizing those who hold certain views. Who wants to be accused of transphobia if opposition to men playing in girls' sports is considered hateful or a sign of mental illness? Black political organizations have often won simply by labeling all opposition as racist. Even demanding a definition of racism is often deemed racist. It's better to keep silent than to risk being denounced. Ever-expanding definitions of evil to score political points trivializes evil. to equate ICE to the Gestapo conflates arresting illegals and deporting them with rounding up Jews to be gassed at Auschwitz. No wonder many Cuban and Venezuelan refugees reject the left's expansively defined oppression narrative. They experienced real oppression firsthand. Civil society rests on a demarcation between good and evil, and linguistic gamesmanship invites returning to savagery. Who wants to live in a world where people can make up good and evil as it suits them? This is the equivalent of an economy where each person coins their own money. Curtailing economic debasement is difficult enough. Stopping linguistic inflation is nearly impossible. No Secret Service-like agency exists to stop people from twisting words into vacuous nonsense. Definitions cannot be imposed. Dictionaries merely catalog conventional usage. And if people insist that being oppressed is merely hurt feelings, that becomes its definition. We worry about protecting the value of the dollar. Perhaps we should also be concerned about the deteriorating state of the English language. Time to ask people what they mean exactly when they toss around terms like fascist, and if they have no idea, advise them to keep quiet. And that was an article from the American Thinker called The Perils of Linguistic Debasement. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of a commentary on the linguistic debasement article. First thing from this article, let me get so I can fix the blame on this guy, Robert Weisberg. The article is ineffective, completely and utterly ineffective, because he's analyzing things and he's doing it from a neutral standpoint. And that's wrong. What he should be doing is fixing the blame. He should be as pointed about it as possible. He should be saying, at the very least, who is it that's debasing the language? Maybe the Democrat Party. So at least say the Democrat Party is doing this. Better yet is to say Chuck Schumer is debasing the language. He's responsible. Send emails to Chuck Schumer demanding that he stop debasing the language. That's excellent. But Mr. Weisberg doesn't do that for whatever reason. He just remains neutral, and he analyzes, and the analysis, since he's not willing to fix the blame, is absolutely worthless. It becomes an academic exercise. And again, he's going to then later on, a year down the road, he's going to be rueing the fact that nothing has changed. Gee, how come nothing changes? How come nobody's fixing anything? How come nothing is better? Well, because of you, Mr. Weisberg. Look in the fucking mirror. The other thing is that he fails to note is in a lot of these cases, we can use their tactics against them. Oppression. And what else? We have, his deal about Nazi, fascist, and king. Again, I've told you how to deal with the Nazi and the fascist thing. And why they're doing it is to give you the illusion that there's only two possibilities. Either you're a communist or you're a Nazi. One of the two. So you need to be able to have the third option, which is Roosevelt. So anybody calls you a Nazi, say, no, not Nazi, Roosevelt. Right? Not Hitler, Roosevelt. That ought to drive them crazy. So that's one of the things you can do. Then when you get into things like homophobia, transphobic and stuff, I've told you how to deal with that one as well. Homophobia, you say, well, gee, what sex do you think I am? What gender do you think I am? Or what sexual preference? That would be, I guess, the way you do it with homophobia. What sexual preference do you think I have, anyways? And that shuts them up. Another one with transphobia, what gender do you think I identify as? That shuts them up. Racism, the same thing. What race do you think I am, anyways? And I've used these before, and they work. They just shut the people. They don't know what to do with it. Because remember, the left is under as much pressure or more than we are. The left has to get it right. They have to be very, very careful about what they say as well, because if they don't say the right things, their own people, the Democrats, the left, the socialists will eat their young. That's the way I heard it referred to in the Air Force. But anyways, getting back to Mr. Weisberg. Mr. Weisberg's article, again, is just one big, long, whiny complaint. And the Republicans and Erzat's conservatives seem to be very, very good at that. Whining and complaining, but they have no answers, no solutions, nothing. And the key to it is fixing the blame. If you're going to come up with solutions, you have to fix the blame. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Jordan Peterson.
You know, people often underestimate the depth of manipulation that occurs in toxic relationships, especially when you're dealing with narcissists. These are individuals, and this is important, who construct an identity, a false self around the incessant need for validation and control. And so when you finally decide to go no contact, which is one of the most powerful boundaries a person can assert, the narcissist doesn't simply disappear into the background like a villain at the end of a fairy tale. No, they begin to hope, but not in the way you or I would think about hope. They hope you'll crack, that your resolve will falter, that the silence will torment you more than it torments them, and that you'll return not stronger but weaker. Submissive, because here's the truth, a narcissist doesn't miss you, they miss their control over you. And when you go no contact, you shatter that illusion. You threaten the entire foundation of their identity, and they will cling desperately to the fantasy that you'll return to playing your role in their pathological script. So today, let's break that down. Let's look clearly and precisely at what a narcissist actually hopes for when you cut them off, and more importantly, how understanding these hopes is the key to dismantling their power for good. When you finally go no contact with a narcissist, one of the first things they quietly hope for, though they'll never admit it, is that guilt will begin to eat at you. Not because they think they did anything wrong. No, quite the opposite. They genuinely believe they were justified in their actions. But they know you. They've studied you. They've observed your values, your sense of morality, your tendency to reflect, to take responsibility even when the blame wasn't entirely yours. And so they bank on that guilt, your guilt, as their potential ticket back into your life. You see, narcissists rarely take accountability. In fact, they often rewrite reality to fit a version of events where they are either the hero or the victim. And when you remove yourself from their story, when you step away without drama, without explanation, without fanfare, it disrupts their narrative. It forces them into a psychological position. They loathe powerlessness, so they rely on emotional residue. They depend on the aftershocks of your empathy to do the work for them. This is where guilt becomes a weapon, subtle but incredibly chosen. They want you to replay every conversation, every argument, every moment of tension, and second-guess yourself. They hope you'll wonder if you were too harsh, too sudden, too cold. They hope you'll remember that one time they were vulnerable, or that moment they said something that seemed sincere, and begin to doubt whether you've misunderstood them completely. They know that if they can haunt your conscience, they don't need to call. They don't need to reach out. You'll do the work of reopening the door all on your own. What makes this tactic effective is how it taps into the core of who you are. People who go no contact with narcissists are rarely cold-hearted. They are often deeply empathetic individuals who held on far too long, hoping for change, giving chance after chance. And even when they finally step away, it's not out of hate, it's out of survival. But the narcissist is counting on you forgetting that. They want you to question your strength, to reframe your boundary as abandonment or cruelty. And because they often planted seeds of self-doubt while you were still connected, little comments, criticisms, or passive-aggressive remarks, you're not starting from a place of certainty. You're starting from a place that's already been undermined. They may even find ways to indirectly provoke your guilt. Perhaps they post cryptic messages online, or they let mutual friends know how hurt they are, how confused they feel. They might say they never expected you to cut them off like that, subtly painting themselves as the one who was wrong. But these actions are not expressions of true hurt. They are strategic performances meant to trigger a reaction. Because if they can't get your attention through direct control, they'll settle for controlling your inner dialogue. If you're thinking about them, if you're wondering whether you were too severe, then in their mind, they still have you. What's crucial to understand is that guilt in the hands of a narcissist is not just an emotion. They turn it into a hook. And they hope that hook will eventually pull you back in. They hope it will override your clarity, your pain, your healing. Because if guilt wins, then they win. When you go no contact with a narcissist, one of the most unsettling things they will do is go completely silent. And at first glance, it may look like indifference or even acceptance, as though they've simply moved on. But that silence isn't peace, it's a calculated maneuver. Narcissists hope their silence will confuse you, disorient you, and ultimately punish you for daring to disconnect without their permission. It's not withdrawal out of pain or reflection. It's strategic silence meant to manipulate your thoughts and emotions in their absence. The narcissist understands, consciously or not, that the human brain craves closure. When relationships end abruptly or boundaries are enforced without mutual agreement, the mind naturally begins searching for answers. What did I miss? Why haven't they reached out? Do they even care? And it's in this state of emotional vulnerability that their silence begins to work against you. They want you to feel that the silence means something more than what it is. They want it to provoke your anxiety, your second-guessing, your longing for explanation. They want you to suffer through the unanswered questions. This is a psychological tactic known as the silent treatment, but in the context of going no contact, it takes on a much deeper dimension. See, while you might believe you're taking back your power and creating space to heal, the narcissist interprets your silence as a challenge to their control. And rather than fight for you in a healthy or honest way, they retaliate in the most passively aggressive way they know. Complete emotional withdrawal. Not because they're moving on, but because they're hoping you can't. They want their absence to scream louder than any words could. They want it to feel like rejection, like punishment, like abandonment. And if they've studied you well, they'll know that you're someone who struggles with unresolved emotions, someone who seeks understanding and tends to overthink. They rely on this. They hope that their silence will drive you to obsessively analyze the situation, to replay every conversation, to scan for clues about what really happened. They want you caught in a loop of wondering while they say absolutely nothing. In many cases, this silence is paired with subtle signals that they are watching you from a distance. A viewed story, a like on an old post, a message left unread. These mixed signals amplify the confusion. It makes you wonder if they're suffering too, if they're waiting for you to make the first move. And that ambiguity is the trap. They never clarify their intentions because clarity would give you power. Confusion keeps you off balance. Silence becomes a performance of power. It's their way of saying, I don't need you even when they do. It's an attempt to reverse the emotional pressure. They want you to feel like you're the one who is being ignored. The cruel irony is that while you may be experiencing emotional turmoil from the lack of contact, the narcissist interprets that distress as evidence that they still matter, that their influence still lingers. They see your confusion as a form of supply validation, that they still occupy space in your mind. It's not about missing you or learning a lesson. It's about withholding presence as punishment. They know that uncertainty breeds anxiety, and that anxiety often leads people to break their own boundaries just for a sliver of relief. That's the goal, to wear you down silently until you're the one who reaches out, not because you want to reconnect, but because you're desperate to end the confusion. When you go no contact with a narcissist, one of the strongest hopes they carry is that you'll be the one to break the boundary first. Not them, not openly. They may not reach out, call, or message, not because they've moved on, but because they want you to. They want you to be the one who caves under the weight of silence, guilt, or confusion. Because if you reach out even once, they regain control of the narrative. They can frame your action as proof that you're still emotionally dependent on them. They don't just hope you'll break no contact, they expect it. And when you don't, it threatens the very foundation of their fragile ego. Narcissists view boundaries as insults, personal offenses. When you enforce no contact, they don't see it as a mature decision to protect your peace. They see it as rejection, humiliation, a direct challenge to their sense of dominance. And narcissists are not built to tolerate that kind of wound to their pride. But rather than address the situation head-on like a healthy adult, they retreat into passive tactics. They often wait it out, pretending to be unbothered while quietly anticipating your breakdown. They've likely tested your boundaries many times before, perhaps in smaller ways, pushing your limits emotionally, gaslighting you, guilt-tripping you, or violating your privacy. And if you've ever bent in the past, even a little, they'll remember that. They'll bank on it. They know that even a temporary moment of weakness can be exploited. They don't need a grand return. Just a single text, a single slip. Anything that signals the door is even slightly open again. In this scenario, the narcissist often positions themselves as the one with restraint. They may say nothing, do nothing, make no effort to contact you, not because they're mature or respectful, but because they want to flip the emotional power dynamic. If you break the silence first, they get to pretend they held the moral high ground. They'll ignore all the harm they caused and instead focus on your response as the problem. See? You couldn't even stay away. You still need me. This becomes ammunition for future manipulation. At the same time, they may provoke indirect contact. They may post something online designed to draw your attention. A cryptic quote. A picture meant to stir jealousy. A shared memory you once discussed. They might talk to mutual friends, dropping your name just enough to make sure word gets back to you. These tactics aren't accidental. They are lure's bait to see if you'll reach out and break your own rules. They want to create just enough emotional friction to keep you unstable. Because if they can't access you directly, they'll try to agitate you from the outside. And when you finally break no contact, whether it's to check in, to express anger, or to seek closure, they get exactly what they want, proof that you're still entangled in the dynamic. It validates their belief that they're irreplaceable in your life. It reassures them that despite your boundary, they still have psychological leverage. Even if your intention is innocent, just one message to say you've moved on or to get clarity, they will twist it. They'll reinterpret it as a comeback, a weakness, a sign that you never truly meant to let go. In their mind, the one who breaks the boundary loses, so they stay silent, play the waiting game, and let time do their dirty work, always hoping that the silence becomes too loud for you to bear. When you go no contact with a narcissist, another deep and often hidden hope they carry is that they'll get the chance to rewrite the story, to reshape the narrative of what happened in a way that protects their ego and reputation. Narcissists don't just want to be seen as right, they need to be. Their identity is constructed on the fragile foundation of being admired, envied, or pitied, but never held accountable. When you walk away and cut all communication, you strip them of the opportunity to control your perception of them. So they shift their focus. If they can't control your perspective anymore, they'll do everything in their power to control how others see what happened between you. This is one of the more insidious aspects of their mindset. They understand often instinctively that silence from you creates a vacuum, and they rush to fill that vacuum with their version of events. They may start planting seeds with mutual friends, co-workers, or even family members. They might suggest that you were unstable, overly emotional, unforgiving, or even abusive. Not with direct accusations, of course. They prefer the subtle, manipulative route. Phrases like, I don't know what happened, they just changed, or I really tried, but they cut me off with no explanation, are designed to make them seem like the victim and you like the irrational one. They want to appear calm, composed, and mature in the aftermath of the relationship's breakdown. The irony is that the more devastating their actions were behind closed doors, the more polished and charming they become in public. It's damage control in disguise. Because if they can't make you look bad to your face, they'll do it behind your back quietly, methodically, and always with a tone of concern that masks their true intentions. What they're really doing is reclaiming control. They hope to manage the story so effectively that by the time you speak up, or if you ever choose to, people already have a fixed image of you in their minds. It's a psychological preemptive strike. They know that most people are uncomfortable with the idea of someone they admire being abusive or manipulative, so they get ahead of the truth. They fill in the blanks with half-truths, distortions, or outright lies. At the same time, they often convince themselves of their own version of events. Narcissists have an extraordinary ability to twist reality not just for others, but for themselves. Over time, they may genuinely believe that they were the ones wronged, that they were unfairly abandoned, that they were nothing but loving and misunderstood. This self-deception helps them avoid the unbearable weight of shame or introspection. Because for a narcissist, admitting fault is equivalent to psychological annihilation. Another layer of this narrative control is their desire to preserve their social image. Narcissists are often deeply concerned with appearances. They want to be seen as the successful partner, the devoted friend, the loving spouse. When someone breaks away from them without closure or reconciliation, it threatens that image. So they go on a kind of charm offensive, making sure everyone sees them as reasonable, kind, even heartbroken. This way, if you ever share your side, you're immediately met with doubt. That doesn't sound like them, people will say. They always seem so nice. This is exactly what the narcissist hopes for, to make you question whether speaking your truth is even worth it, to make you feel isolated and unheard, even outside the relationship. It's not enough for them to lose control over you. They want to maintain control over the entire story, and they'll rewrite it as many times as it takes to cast themselves in the best possible light. When you go no contact with a narcissist, one of the less obvious but deeply rooted hopes they cling to is the belief that you still crave their validation. That even in your silence, even in your absence, you're secretly yearning for their approval, their attention, their acknowledgement. Narcissists survive off of admiration and control. So when you withdraw, it isn't just the end of a relationship in their eyes, it's a threat to their very identity. And to protect that identity, they convince themselves that you haven't really let go, that deep down you still want them to notice you. Narcissists view validation not as something earned through trust or mutual respect, but as a form of leverage. In the relationship, they used it strategically, offering praise or affection in small doses, always conditional, always timed to keep you hooked. One moment they'd lift you up, make you feel seen or valued, and the next they'd withdraw completely or criticize you without warning. This pattern trains you to chase their approval, to tie your self-worth to their moods and opinions. And even after the relationship ends, they believe that pattern remains alive in you. When you cut contact, the narcissist doesn't see it as a final act of strength. Instead, they tell themselves it's a performance, an act of desperation, a cry for attention. They believe that your silence is loud, that you're waiting, hoping for them to reappear so you can feel chosen again. And if they sense even the slightest chance that you're still watching them from afar, liking a post, asking about them, or even just staying informed through mutual friends, it confirms their belief that you haven't detached. To them, that's enough. They interpret even your restraint as evidence that they still hold power over your emotions. This is why many narcissists will put on a show after no contact begins. They might start posting curated images, accomplishments, because they're happy, but because they want you to see them and react. They want to trigger that old dependency, that urge to feel validated by them again. If they can make you feel inadequate, replaced, or forgotten, they believe you'll come crawling back, not necessarily to be with them, but to regain their attention. What they fail to understand is that going no contact is often the result of immense pain and clarity. It's not a tactic, it's a boundary. But narcissists don't truly grasp boundaries. They see them as power plays, and in their mind, every interaction or lack of interaction is part of a game. They hope you're still playing, even if silently, because if they can believe that you still crave their validation, then they don't have to question their worth. They don't have to confront the reality that someone saw through their facade and chose peace over chaos. They also know how addictive their validation once was, how high the highs could be, and how low the lows. That emotional roller coaster creates a psychological bond, one that's difficult to break without deep inner work. And so they hope that bond is still intact, that despite your silence, you're still wondering what they think of you, still hoping they'll reach out, still wanting their approval, even if only subconsciously. Because for a narcissist, the idea that you've truly outgrown them, that you no longer need their validation to feel worthy, is more threatening than any insult. It means they've lost the thing they relied on most, your emotional dependency. And in their world, losing that means losing relevance, power, and the illusion that they're still the center of your universe. When you go no contact with a narcissist, one of their quietest yet most persistent hopes is that you haven't truly moved on. That even if you've blocked them, erased their number, and cut all avenues of communication, some part of you is still stuck in the past, still thinking about them, still emotionally tethered to what once was. Because as long as they believe you're emotionally anchored to the relationship, even in pain, even in anger, they feel they still matter. To a narcissist, indifference is the real threat, not hate, not grief, but indifference. It signals the ultimate loss of control, the true end of their influence. Narcissists survive on psychological hooks, emotional entanglements they embedded over time to keep you invested. They may have made themselves the center of your world, created cycles of hope and despair, pulled you in with charm only to push you away with cruelty. These dynamics are not just emotional, they are addictive. They train your nervous system to stay on edge, to seek resolution, to crave closure. So when you finally go no contact, they don't assume it's over. They assume you're recovering, yes, but still attached. They hope that you're still watching them from a distance, still questioning yourself, still wondering if things could have turned out differently. They want to believe that you're stuck in reflection, in analysis, in memory, that even if you're not reaching out, you're still haunted by their voice, their image, their influence. This belief soothes them. It allows them to think they still hold psychological power over you, even in absence. Because for a narcissist, being forgotten is intolerable. It threatens the inflated yet fragile identity they've carefully constructed. This hope that you haven't moved on is often what fuels their long-game tactics. Narcissists are notorious for resurfacing months or even years after no contact. This isn't random. It's rooted in the belief that time doesn't truly break the bond, that somewhere deep inside you're still open to their return. So they test the waters. A sudden message, a random, like a question sent through a mutual connection. If you respond, even minimally, it confirms their belief you never truly left them behind. And once that belief is validated, they may attempt to re-enter your life, not to repair what was broken, but to reestablish control. What's particularly cruel about this is how they often misread your healing. They may interpret your silence as unresolved emotion. They mistake your lack of reaction for suppressed longing. And if they see you thriving, they assume it's a facade, because they cannot fathom a world where you've actually found peace without them. Their ego won't allow it. In their mind, they were the best thing that happened to you, or at the very least, the most impactful. So the idea that you could move on, rebuild, and grow stronger in their absence is something they'll deny, downplay, or attempt to sabotage. This is also why some narcissists will go to great lengths to win the breakup. They may quickly get into a new relationship, flaunt their supposed happiness, or portray themselves as having effortlessly moved on. But underneath that display is insecurity. If they truly believed you were still emotionally attached, they wouldn't need to prove anything. The performance is for your benefit, or more accurately, for the image they hope you're still watching. Because if you see them happy and react, even negatively, it proves they still affect you. They're not looking for you to reach out with love or regret. They're satisfied with resentment, curiosity, even silence, as long as they believe it's emotionally charged. Because to a narcissist, any feeling is better than no feeling. Any trace of attention is a reminder that they still occupy space in your world. What they fear most is being irrelevant, erased, or worst of all, unimportant.
And that was Jordan Peterson. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.